Hi there, welcome to another big interview. It's me, Graham. Today, our guest is Uwe Rösler, who really needs no introduction to any Manchester City fan or those who were immersed in English football in the 1990s, when he played for the team which is currently running away with the Premier League and playing football like, well, most of us have never seen before. However, in this chat, I was more interested in Uwe's early years in East Germany before the country was unified. He learned a lot of his football and his standards in the communist regime's School of Excellence in Leipzig. And when he joined his first senior club, he was immediately under pressure from the Stasi, East Germany's state secret police. The anecdote involves a threat to his career and a Harley Davidson. This story that Uwe tells us is unlike anything you've heard from any of our guests on the big interview. His revelations about what he sees in the excellence of the modern city, tying them back to Leipzig in the 90s, interesting. But also talking about his current team, Fortuna Dusseldorf, the latest stop in a long and interesting managerial career for Uwe. Fortuna are currently in the middle of a scrap to escape the second tier in Germany, and Uwe and his media staff at Fortuna Dusseldorf were extremely generous with their time and technical help on this interview. Thanks to them. But I promise you, observers of Manchester City and fans, listen out for Uwe at his best. I hope you enjoy it. There'll be more soon. In a time of fantastic success for one of the many clubs that you played for and one that you love and where the fans love you, we're in a time of magical success for Manchester City. First of all, welcome to the big interview. We're always proud on this series to speak to people who are characterful, who are successful, who are interesting, but above all, people we admire. And the three of us who set this up, we admire you for so many things that you've done. So I'm glad you've joined us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are conscious you're taking time out of your role as head coach of Fortuna Dusseldorf, and I want to share with you, I've nearly forgiven Fortuna for beating Aberdeen in the UEFA Cup in 1978, nearly, and this is maybe the last element that was missing. Uwe, to let you know what we tried to do, across our series, I think you're going to be the fourth or fifth German man that we've spoken to about their career. One was Thomas Hitzelsberger, who ran away from Bayern Munich without Uli Hoeneß's permission to secretly go train at Aston Villa. One was Robert Huth, who grew up in Biesdorf in East Berlin and was a little bit scared of the streets because there were some tough people around. So he took up judo and learned to be a judo fighter just to survive. Mertesacker was another, who did his civil dienst in a mental hospital and stayed overnight with the keys, and as a young guy doing his civil dienst was the guy in charge of that place, and it formed his character. Not long ago in Berlin, I was listening to Thomas Tuchel speaking about when he was youth coach at Mainz particularly, and he said, I demanded the best for all my young players. They had to have the same treatment as the first team. Now I would go and change everything, he said. Young players don't get tested. They have no solutions these days. They're robots. Maybe you can see already where I'm going. In reading about your life, one of the remarkable stories was a test that you had to face as a promising young footballer, that even at 17, 18, you were important to your club, and you were working in an environment you'd been prepared for through the academy system in East Germany. And people that listen to this won't know, although you've told the story many times, that the East German police, the Stasi, came to you and put one of the most difficult things that can be put across anybody, not just a young footballer, to ask to do a certain thing that is against your principles, that tests your morals and scares you, that puts fear in you. Please tell our listeners, take us back to the situation that happened to you, and try and give those who are much younger than you, and I am older than you, but who have no idea what life was like in East Germany at that time, and the test that was thrown at you by the Stasi.
Yeah, I was 18 years old, just was joining the first team as I had my first professional contract. At the time with Lokomotive Leipzig, where I had my youth done in a very good environment, highly driven environment, highly performance environment. Lokomotive Leipzig at the time, in the year I joined them, they had the final European Cup final against Ajax Amsterdam. In the final, lost 1-0, Van Basten scored, and I joined 2 weeks later their training session. So obviously that can show you there was a top football club run from the bottom to the top. What we had in very young ages, completely different than today. Everything was based on pressure and control. Pressure means pressure to perform was the selection system. You were taking away. I was taken away when I was 11 from my parents. Went into to a place where you live, sleep, learn, and play football 24/7, and everything controlled, everything managed by the government. My parents didn't need to pay any money whatsoever for this elite school. There was an elite school, and my parents and I by myself was really proud to be chosen to be on that school. In my district where I come from, hundreds of kilometers, there was nobody ever achieved that. So it was quite a statement, quite a privilege. But to keep that privilege, to stay there, was from 11, 12, 13 years onwards, pressure. Every year, 2-3 players had to leave, 2-3 players had to come in. And so the whole system was run by pressure from the top to perform. So when you coming then to the top, you did all my years, youth national teams, being successful, coming down into the first team. You can see your dreams now getting closer and closer to play for the first team in the highest level. And then obviously then comes a phone call one day. I was supposed to just finish my school lesson and going for training. And then the police officer came to me and said, somebody pick you up. I had no clue whatsoever what's coming. Outside the school, somebody came in, got me into a car, drove 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes through Leipzig. Then we changed the car again into another car. Then we drove another 10 minutes, and then we drove in to an underground garage, lift up, office. And two guys were sitting there and interviewing me. First tried to be quite friendly. I thought something my dad had was in a little village where he is. Sometimes he had a good drink, so sometimes I was thinking he maybe have said something, and oh my God, what's going on here? So no, they were quite friendly, and then the longer the conversation went, everything headed in one direction. They wanted to get me on the list of spying on my teammates, the first team. They threatened me to have my career in their hands when I'm not willing to cooperate. For them it's pretty easy to send me to army for 3 years with no football, and my career is basically finished. And then you as a young player, all what you knew was playing football, sleeping, learning, and playing football again. And then you're so close, and then they put you under that pressure. There was a mental, unbelievable situation, and I was not allowed to speak about anyone. I opened up to my parents, and my dad gave me the right and the only advice. He said, the only way you come out of this, going to the head coach of the team where I just joined, Hans-Ulrich Thomale. I went to him, I told him what happened, and after that, he solved all the problems for me, and I never heard anything. I saw those people quite a bit to games. They were there. But I was very lucky to got off it with having no consequence on my career. And those moments I not wish anyone to experience, because I didn't know how that will end up.
At the time, you feel fear, not necessarily because of the men, but because of how hard you'd worked to be in elite company, and the career was there. And the fear of having something that you treasure taken away is one of the most horrible feelings for any human being, man or woman. So you felt fear at the time, but if you try to think about that scar and how it healed, Did that do anything to you? Has it done anything for you retrospectively in life about coping, about managing pressure, about threats?
It showed me that you have to share things to get over things. I definitely have learned that. But you only can share things with the right people. And I was very lucky to listen to my dad, and I shared it with the right people, and they helped me. And I'm very thankful for my former head coach, Hans-Ulrich Thomale, and my dad, that they gave me that advice, and they solved the problem for me, because it's so many players, and after the years after unification, got quite public how many players were born exactly in the same situation like I was, and didn't do what I did. I felt I was very, very fortunate, and I'd never wanted to do anything to do with this. My only wish in my life at that time was to play football and develop to the best I can be. And that was my only wish, and God bless, I had the chance to fully fill that.
One of the things when you told the story originally made me smile was this all had something to do with the Harley Davidson. And you mentioned a police officer, but nobody, well, most people listening, want to know what the police officer was and how this kind of, spy too strong a word, but observer was a threat to how you behave. I know I'm being very polite in my word there. It was a threat to how everybody behaved because they were monitoring all the time. But it was part of the difficulty was partly because the suspicions raised because of you doing an Easy Rider on a Harley Davidson in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, right?
First and foremost, I have to say, every time we went abroad, already with the youth national teams, you knew there were people in around the group, either was the staff or either people who were traveling with you, who had one job: to control the group, that nothing happened, because the government invested so much time, money, education in those sports people. The last thing what they wanted is that they leave the country, so we all knew that we always been observed. We sometimes joked about it, but becomes my first trip with the first team. So I joined the first team in the summer, and then we went trained 2 weeks home in Leipzig, and then we went to a trip to Sweden. So, and coincidentally, I married later on a Scandinavian girl. So because I just remember it like it was today, when you went to Sweden, I've never seen a country with so many colorful houses, wooden colorful houses, one red, one yellow, one blue, one white. And in the east, in Leipzig, everything was gray. So I was amazed about the colors, and there was summer, and there was the flowers as well. And I was like Peter Pan in Wonderland. So that's well, unbelievable. And so we had our training camp there, and then we got invited by the local president of the team, where we were guests, where we could train on to a barbecue. And so we all joined them, and all those people behind was also there. It was a big gathering. And stood the bike, and at the time I had the bike home in the east. So and I showed some interest. I brought around the bike, and the other guys was eating and barbecue, and I was thinking I was just around that bike, and the guy said, "Oh, you want to have a ride?" And I said, "Oh yeah, can I?" And he said, "Yeah, no problem, take it." So I never thought about anything bad. Just went on the bike, rode the bike for 10 minutes, came back, and that was the biggest uproar you can imagine. That people was thinking I left the country, I disappeared. So I just had to ride around the little village and came back. And obviously then I don't know what I put in my papers, what was stored in the ministerium. So, but that was my first incident, and I got a big wake-up call from the police officer, what the hell I'm thinking of doing.
Do you know, Uwe, long before we come to the influence you've had on English soccer culture, which is big, I think it's worth me saying, we won't spend all our time about East Germany, but it's part of your formation. And it's really clear that a lot of what you experienced then, and this holds good for Robert Hooke too, okay? There was unification by the time he was growing up in East Berlin, but he talked about greyness, he talked about phone tapping, he talked about his parents being strong opponents of totalitarianism and being in threat. In fact, his father being detained. It's really clear that you can number a lot of benefits and a lot of pride for what you experienced growing up in East Germany. No doubts about that. But we're 30 years and a little bit on from the wall coming down. We live in really troubled times across lots of parts of the world where totalitarianism, poor values are coming in everywhere. I wonder if you could find ways to sum up what it felt like when the two countries that's now Germany unified, when you suffered the shock, the change of what must have seemed a very extravagant Western lifestyle once West Germany and East Germany merged. Because you were, although you're growing up places just outside Leipzig, Leipzig was one of the centres, particularly with the Monday demonstrations, of where an upsurge of public feeling influenced the government. It might not have been the only thing, but you were somewhat at the centre of a social movement, which is one of the most famous things in your or my lifetime.
Definitely. I was in a training camp in Leipzig with the national team. We were preparing for the World Cup qualifier. Now, my first time with the A national team against Austria, we needed a draw and we lost 3-0 because of all what happened. We completely lost focus. So I think first of all, I would like to say that looking back on my youth, looking back on my upbringing, I have to say, and I truly mean it, that without this elite school program I went through, I would have never had a career as a footballer and as a coach, probably, because it shaped me also as a person and in my work ethic. I would have never come so far like I came. I have to say, this elite school, there were years ahead of anyone else when we're talking about taking the talents early on to a place, design a system, a school system around training, that you optimize training sessions. Then also a first-class school education. We're talking about extra and special training session, athletic coaches. We're talking about technical coaches. We're talking about maximizing the time for improving players. That was unbelievable. And we was years ahead of anything else at the time. What we wasn't ahead was, for us, was in the end all about the collective, all about the team. It was not about the individual, because they needed to control the team, they needed to control the collective. And this is why we had very good educated footballers. You could see that also in the years after unification. A lot of them went into the national, in the whole German national squad. What was very difficult was 1999, Germany won the World Cup. They had an outstanding team. So, but what we was missing to fully fill as a nation, as East Germany, more success in football, because we cooked in our own pot. So we didn't have the creativity as an individual to express ourselves, and then the team would benefit from that.
Okay, I'm sorry to come in, but you've intrigued me. Okay, I'll buy that in general, but the ones who came through, if you think about it, you're not some automaton robot. You are fiery and individual and different. The same must go for, okay, but Kirsten, Sammer, Ballack, the ones who came through and really punched their weight in Bundesliga abroad and for the Mannschaft, they had maybe the things you're talking about, the idea of the collective and the upbringing, but also the ones who came through, they were anarchists, they were powerful, they were noisy.
But all names you just mentioned, there was all the younger generation. Don't forget, I was 20 years old when that happened, or 21 years old, and Ulf Kirsten, Thomas Doll, Andreas Thom, Matthias Sammer, Ballack was even 3 or 4 years younger. So we were still in the beginning of our careers, professional careers, in the start of our professional careers. We still had the ability and also the time to change, to adapt quicker. But I'm talking about the generations of footballers before us, and that has stopped the East German football to really flourish, I think. And but you could see they have developed very, very good players. And just the names we just mentioned, there have been outstanding more players in the history after that who played for Germany and had big success on all levels.
The other thing that I was mentioning, apart from the credit to be given to the East German system, was unification. I think outside Germany, it's associated with joy and freedom and a social power, social movement. But it was difficult. Like, for example, I'm interested in how you were treated. So West German footballers, I think there's an anecdote of you beating Bayern Munich, going there and winning with Dresden. And I think it's Thomas Bertholds sticking it to you all game and giving you grief. I earn this much, my car is this much, and you giving it back to him. But equally, an astonishing story of agents coming to be ready to pinch East German players, maybe even before the wall comes down. In 1989-90, football agents were still so quick, so avaricious. What I mean is, for you as a footballer or as a German, try to give us a sense of the threats and the benefits of that era.
First and foremost, when I talked about, I need to clarify that, when I talked about the system, I just said for me what the system that I had a chance to go to this elite school. I'm not talking about the political system.
No, I know.
What I benefit from, only purely of the ability and the chance to get given to develop under those highly performance environment, my personal career. So coming now to the point what you just mentioned, we were very young, or I was very young, and everything had happened very fast. We were in the training camp in Leipzig. Police officer told the national team players, tell your family members, don't go out on the streets tonight. Tell your friends, don't go out on the streets tonight, because there was a lot of players from Leipzig, Dresden, Magdeburg was where all people come from for the demonstration Monday night. We going in tonight. So that was like big pressure to tell our family members don't go in. They had a ring around Leipzig where there was touch and go. They're going in and stop it forever for once. God bless they didn't do it.
You're saying it was a dangerous situation.
Very dangerous situation, and we're talking about life-threatening situation that the army was touch and go to go in and stop the demonstration. So obviously then it was a peaceful revolution in the end, where we were unbelievably happy with. And I saw a reportage about Gorbachev just yesterday, and this man, you cannot highlight enough how much he had supported that peaceful revolution. And then obviously you be young, you be 20, 21, playing really well, being in the national team, being a top scorer, one of the top scorers in the East German League, played in Europe already, the clubs have seen you. And then from one day to another, the door opened up. And we are absolutely not prepared now as human beings what will follow. So agents were staying in front of our hotel with the national team, 10, 20 agents, and try to get contact to the players. I think there was a story that the manager from Bayer Leverkusen was in Vienna when we played the game, was sitting next to where the substitutes were sitting and exchange telephone numbers, and they had the first phone call made. Contract-wise, we was amateurs, so that means there was no problem after unification to go without any compensation as a national team player to the Bundesliga. So wild times, exciting times, crazy times. Sometimes also you had to learn very fast to survive. But I was very, very fortunate to be young enough to experience a new life.
We have good sponsors who support us all the time. Bet365 have sent us a question in Uwe asking you to name the highlight of your playing career. Now, it's your answer, but I suspect that choosing to be one of the East German guys who stay with an East German team, Dresden, and being able to go to Bayern Munich and win 2-1 must be at least one of them.
I was not a player who won an enormously amount of titles, or medals. I think when you ask me what is your biggest achievement, I felt I wanted to play at the highest level in East Germany. I achieved that. I wanted to play for my country at the time. I achieved that. I wanted to play very early on. I was very keen to play in the Premier League. I achieved that. I think my biggest achievement, is to be in the Hall of Fame of Manchester City, because this club really, truly means something for me. And as a foreign player, to be mentioned with all those other legends, I think that is probably my biggest achievement, that I left something there where I made people happy, and they still have not forgotten me.
And that's the gateway into asking you about Manchester City, because obviously even those who are younger listening to this and have only seen good times know that there was a time when it wasn't so good. When you moved there, I think the first half season, I think you get about 5 goals in 12 games. Any striker is going to be excited about that. It's clear that, and we'll come back to this, when you chip Peter Schmeichel in a derby, all these things, it's clear why you would be popular and liked. But I'd like you to try and explain, what was it about Uwe Rösler and the culture of Manchester City, or the culture of Manchester? Where was the click? Because you're not just a sporting hero. You know that. You're a cultural hero. My opinion is perhaps you stand with Dickov and Kinky and the GOAT for guys who were fighting for us, City, when things were low. I don't know. What were the special ingredients in the love affair between you and City?
First and foremost, you could not compare Manchester City in the 90s than how Manchester City is now. So we were a local club for Manchester. Today, Manchester City is a global club. Yeah. So when I joined Manchester City, there was a foreign rule. I think there was not more allowed than 3 foreigners, and we're not counting Irish, Wales, Scottish. They were all allowed. So there was it was tough to get one of those foreign places and keep that place. So that was tough. There was more a national team than an international team. When I came over, I was very, very fortunate. I just joining Manchester City on the back of a long injury. And I was on loan because the club didn't know what I'm getting. I didn't know what I can expect. And obviously, I just spoke to Paul Walsh 2 or 3 days ago, and we talked about our first 2 games together. Paul came at the same time like I do. And the first 2 games, we played Sheffield United home and Wimbledon home, 2 home games against probably the most physical teams you can imagine at the time. And Paul and I, we probably had only 1 or 2 training sessions, and then we put together. I couldn't speak a word English, didn't know anything about English football, and then we starting to work it out on the pitch. No coach told us. There was Steve McMahon told me on the tactic board a little bit. Paul Walsh told me do this, and somehow in the 4th game we starting to scoring goals, and then we never looked back after that. But it was an amazing time, and what I felt was a lot about the team, and that reminded me on where I come from, what I experienced on, because the team took care about the team, the players care about the players. I couldn't speak any English, so after games they took me out with. I was just a disturbance for the players because I couldn't speak, I couldn't communicate. I was just a hang on, but they never left me alone. On a Sunday, 8-9 players played golf. They took me with. I drove the buggy and served the drinks. So they really took care about my social life in the beginning. The club, Francis Lee, he has a son, it's called Gary Lee. He took care about me, supporting me with all practical things. But you had today a liaison officer. That was Gary Lee, the son of the chairman. So I felt from the first moment when I joined the club, I felt welcome. I felt people caring about me. People try to give me a chance. And obviously the atmosphere in the stadium. I'm an emotional person as a player, as a coach. I miss now, especially in Corona times, I miss so much the crowd. And looking back, when I joined Manchester City, the crowd at Main Road was something special for me. And I think coming back to what you said, why is this relationship? Obviously, as a striker, you need to score goals. I think I did that. But there was many strikers who scored the same amount or maybe more. I tried to play with my heart on the sleeves. I try to give what I have. I try to be the best I can be on that given day. And I think I came across that I do that. And I think the supporters saw that and they appreciated that in difficult times, that I gave it my best.
You know, I don't know if even with tapes you saw Franny Lee play, because I guess Manchester City games, Derby games when you were young in East Germany weren't shown on television, so fine. But I watched Franny Lee play, and Franny played with the same spirit and aggression and will to win as you did. There was a similarity, no question whatsoever. But it's funny when you explain it that way, Uwe, and that's what this forum is supposed to be about. Now, there's a great deal of yearning in Britain for the things that we see in particularly Bundesliga, but I'm sure Bundesliga 2 as well, that fans get in for cheaper prices, that there's a lot of choreographed singing. I remember Raúl leaving Real Madrid, the Prince of Madrid leaving and going to Schalke, and pretty soon afterwards saying, I should have left, because he was shitting himself when the fans made him go and take the microphone behind the goal, something that's commonplace for you guys, but still isn't well known around Europe. And he has to sing and pretend he knows some German words, and the fans love him for trying it, and it's beautiful. And when you see him fighting in the cup again in the semi-final against Bayern, he's another Gelsenkirchen guy, he's another Schalke guy, because it's in his soul, like City was to you. But, you know, instead of us looking at Germany and yearning and saying, look at all the good things you've got, you said that about the City crowd. Why? What? Main Road? The humour? What was it then that infected you? I can see what they thought about you, but what did they give that made you think, they're special? Explain it.
First of all, they made me feel home. I think that was very important. I had a very difficult situation in my career, coming on the back of a long injury. And before that injury, I wasn't firing when I was in Nuremberg. I had a bad year. So I felt straight away accepted. I felt people caring about me, tried to help me. I felt I was very fortunate to come in a team where I suited in very well in the way I was playing. Because I had a lot of experienced players next to me who teach me the game, who teach me the English game. I felt I was very fortunate. Also, I come from German football where at the time was a lot man against man. You were always man-marked, and you had a sweeper, and as a striker, well, you needed not to beat one player, you needed to beat two players. And in England, I find playing against a back 4-4-2, everyone played 4-4-2. It suited my game so much to have intelligent runs between the gaps, have players who can serve you. I think the game started to get easier for me. And, you know, in Germany at the time, there was a big step from East German football to Bundesliga football. And that was a really hard time to get through this as a striker, to get on a score sheet and stay in a team. But I felt that in Manchester, I think a lot of things I benefited from, but what was amazing was Main Road was the biggest pitch in the country, and I was a guy who was fit at the time. I was running a lot. I tried to wear out defenders, and that helped me definitely as well. And obviously, I experienced a feeling. The crowd gave me a feeling. I'm walking on the pitch, and nothing can happen to me. And I never had that in my playing career. I walked out in home games, and I know nothing can happen to me. Only good things. And when you have that sort of belief, then you probably overperforming actually to your normal standards. And the crowd has given me that feeling, and that feeling is unique. And I never had it before, and I never had it after.
Well, if you could bottle that feeling, I mean, I've got hairs in the back of my neck going up now. If you could bottle that feeling or make people who have never experienced it in their lives feel it, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing because I experienced today. I think we as players, we had it sometimes easier than the players today, because today's players, what I experience, have so much pressure through social media, so much pressure. We had the pressure from ourselves. We had the pressure from our families. We had the pressure from our supporters, but that's it. Now they have social media, what's going on social media, on hate speeches and what's going on there is unbelievable. And to go out and play with a freedom, go out and play with a natural belief, you will perform, everything will be fine. It's not often a lot of players can say that.
Tell us about some of the characters. You mentioned Steve McMahon, a fierce competitor. Walsh as well, when you listen to Paul talking, he got a bit lost. He'd fallen out with Kenny Dalglish badly, didn't feel respected by Kenny. In London, he says himself now, he lived a little bit party boy. But coming to City for him was a release in a different way for you, but the effect was the same. He played really good football, he found his confidence again, he found goals. Maybe he found you as a strike partner, but what was he like to be around?
I called Paul last week after the interview he gave to the Daily Mail, and I just congratulate him for his honesty and for his bravery to open up like he did. And so it's just the Paul I knew. I really found him really funny. I find him. Sometimes you could wind him up after I learned a little bit English. So I found him very nice to be around on the football pitch. He liked to do that what I didn't like to do, and he left me the freedom to do my things where I was good at it, and I think we complemented each other really well. For me, he was one of the best players I ever played with. When you see, he was not the tallest player, but when you see how he put himself about, how he could dribble left foot, right foot, how tenacious he was, how aggressive he was to not get bullied by far bigger defenders, how brave he was in the box to attacking headers. He was for a small player very, very good in the air. He scored in that season, I think in 1994, I think he scored something like 15, 16 goals, and I scored 20, 23 goals. We had probably the season of our lives, and I benefited a lot from players like Paul, like Peter Beagrie, like Steve McMahon, like Niall Quinn later on. When Niall Quinn came back after his injury, I played also a lot with Niall together. So Nicky Summerby.
Young Clough could play also.
Yeah, Nigel came later on as well. King Glatze, obviously the maestro. So I really enjoyed my time there. I met a lot of very good footballers, but also very nice people.
I need to ask you two more about your time there. The first is, again, Bet365 asked me to ask you, what's it like to score in a Manchester derby? And for a competitor like you, I have to ask you this thing, please set aside the final score. Please just bottle up the way in which the match began. Describe, for those who weren't alive or haven't seen it, describe the pitch, the atmosphere, and then the feeling.
First and foremost, I think the derby match was leading into a derby match started 3-4 weeks before actually the game started. I think that game was obviously the highlight of the year for us. Maybe not so much for Man United, because at times they had bigger fish to fry. But for us, Manchester City at the time, to play against our biggest rivals, that was the match. That was the two matches of the year, and so the focus was the build up to the game was unbelievable. I played a lot of derbies, but I never had anything close, something close to that. People from Germany came over. Going home, I say now also playing at Old Trafford. Obviously, atmosphere electric on both grounds. Playing at Old Trafford, big stadium, also big pitch, and we always started well. We always was in the games. It was very tight games. we were mid-table, below mid-table, and Man United obviously was fighting for the championship. But the games was very, very tight. Unfortunately, I didn't win a derby, but we all lost 2-1, 3-2, 1-0. So the games was really, really close. But Man United at the time had just a bit more than us, unfortunately, and that was one of my biggest regrets, that we never could give a derby win in my time there to our crowd.
Okay, then the passionate guy in me, even though I'm not a citizen, comes out, because you called him the maestro. If I'm not wrong, the pass is kinky. It's a first-time pass. If I'm not wrong, you're making a run, you bend your run, you hold just in time so that you're onside. The pitch is muddy and bumpy, and you chip the keeper. Give us that. Put us inside the striker's head when that moment comes. Por favor.
Obviously, Georgi Kinkladze, one of the technically most gifted players I ever seen at the time and played with, joined the club. And Paul left, Quinny left, Peter Beagrie left. So I came to a stage of my career where I have to adapt to another style of play again. And was not easy. And I think that was not only me, it was the whole team. But I think Georgie was at the time, it was the center of our play, and we needed to find a way to play with him. And Georgie needed also to find a way to play with us. And this is why in that season, when we got relegated, we didn't win the game for the first 8 games, because we found it very difficult for playing one-way football the previous years before, and then change completely, especially when we're talking about the attacking game. But eventually, we starting to click. And this was one of the games where definitely Georgie has shown what an unbelievable individual, talented player he was. He was an entertainer. People paid a lot of money to just come and see him. And obviously for me as a striker, I benefit from such a high level of individual skills. You needed to make the runs and he will find you. And that was the secret. You needed to stay on side. You need to make the runs and he will find you. And that exactly happened in that situation, what you just meant. I looked for the room in behind their back line, timed the run very good, had eye contact, and Georgie released the ball at the right time over the top. And now we won against Schmeichel. There was a FA Cup game, a fifth or sixth round, and I chipped him. And that was one of the greatest feelings I ever had, because scoring at Old Trafford in front of 10,000 of City fans, because we had a higher ticket allocation for the game. That was something unbelievable. Unfortunately, we lost the game 2-1. The referee played his role in a very dodgy penalty just a minute before halftime. But that was a fantastic feeling to score.
In this mad era where everybody knows everything, there's data coming out of our ears. You can analyse everything. And pre-match, there's all the information. How can it happen that so recently you were in a team that got relegated because nobody knew what was happening? It's one of the most crazy stories of modern English football, and maybe it couldn't happen to City today, but maybe it could only happen to City back then. If you look back from the situation you're in now as a top-class manager, you must have to filter out all the information and filter carefully what you give to your Fortuna Dusseldorf players. But back then, City are relegated with players and management and fans all disagreeing about what was going on, and ultimately that game against Liverpool is a disaster. When you look back at it, do you look back with total disbelief?
As a first and foremost, we cannot compare the times today with the times at the time. I think we went into the game, Liverpool had nothing to play for, and Liverpool, I had the feeling that Liverpool and their players, they were really interested. Probably not that we got relegated, that we stay in the league, because for them to play against us at the time, they mostly won. So there was a shortly way from Merseyside to Main Road and opposite. So I think the game, we were very, very nervous because we were depending also on another result from Southampton. We were 2-0 down Liverpool tried, but not that hard because they had nothing really to play for. So we missed a few chances. I missed a header on the first half. I had the ball against the post. So in halftime, coming out, basically nothing else to lose. Had the knife on the throat, and then we lost our fear of getting relegated. We started to play football, and we pushed them back. We came back, penalty. I scored a penalty, and then Kit Simon scored the equalizer 2-2. And at the time when the equalizer came, I don't know exactly the minute, the draw was enough for us to stay in the league. But this situation had changed a few minutes later when Southampton scored. And we got told after the equalizer to hold the ball, go in the corners. And that was like something like 15 minutes to play. Also, people said, you know what, take the tempo out of the game, go in the corners, don't attack anymore. The draw is enough. So the game has changed. Nye Quinn was then already, he was in the treatment room. Nye Quinn saw on the television, they spoke about it on the television, that we was just holding on the result. We didn't try to attack anymore. And he was running out with his towel around his waist and screamed, lads, we need to attack. We need a goal. We need a goal. But we also got a message to just keep the ball in the corners and make sure that we don't get pushed back. So there was a lack of communication between all parties. I don't want to blame anyone here, but I think you never know, would have been this 10 minutes enough? But I think the lack of communication was also played a big part of it, that we got relegated.
It's just so remarkable now when everything is communicated. Internet makes everything instant. It's just looking back at it. I watched it again today, thinking about this interview, and to think that happened during my career, during your playing career, just seemed astonishing. My last two, Uwe, concern City now and Fortuna Dusseldorf now. One, when you watch from a distance, apart from maybe enjoying the club that you love, being so powerful, when you look at the academy, when you look at the brand of football, when you watch Guardiola's means of I think educating all of us, not just his squad, he's changing our minds about positional play, about altering the rules of particular football, what possession is and isn't for, even how to defend with the ball, all these things. When you look from afar at what's happening at City, and also maybe considering with whatever you thought about him when he was in charge at Bayern, sum up what you're watching, what you think of it.
Like you said, I really followed it closely when Pep came to German football and he revolutionized German football. And I'm not the only one. I said it a long time ago. Without Pep Guardiola, we probably would have not won the World Cup in 2014. Joachim Löw is a very smart and very, very good coach, but he used a block of Bayern Munich players who at the time was coached and drilled in a certain way of playing. What has German football have not seen before? And I think that was the foundation to win the World Cup in 2014 in Brazil. And you see now the same thing in English football. What Guardiola brings to English football. This is not only fantastic for Manchester City Football Club, it's also fantastic for English football in general. His new ideas, his new ways of thinking, his new type of players, and it's for me amazing to see him. My son had played in the City Academy. My son had for 9 years. My son had trained occasionally with the first team. I was able to watch certain training sessions, to see him working with the players, to see the methods, to see the idea behind certain drills. Is amazing. Is fantastic. And Manchester City, and big compliment to the owners, what they have invested into the club, not only in terms of stadium, training ground, East Manchester, also what they invested in bringing the best coach to the club.
And the academy is a little bit like the things you described about your upbringing, about excellence, about maximising, about education. I mean, when you were talking about your days in Leipzig, the echoes of the Manchester Academy, to me, from what I've seen from being there, sounded really similar, right?
Yes, definitely. When you especially also saw that in the school system, they put the private education for the chosen players in place, where then the school times was put around training sessions. And I think that is exactly what we had 25 or 30 years before that in the East. So I saw a lot of similarities, and also in terms of different type of sports, not only football drills, also a number of things, athletic things, gymnastic things, where you get a all-round sportly education. And especially then also specialized on certain way of playing. Like Pep always a big focus on midfield players, on wide players, on playing out from the back. I think everyone who is part of the City Academy who get a first-class football education would set them in good state for a later career.
In Britain, we have a fascination with the health and well-being of German football. A lot of people before COVID came and watched adopted teams in Bundesliga 2 because it's easy to get in, get tickets, you can still have a drink. The noise, the singing remind us of days maybe in the past, in the 80s and 70s in British football. So you're in charge of Fortuna Dusseldorf, a historic club. You're within 7-8 points of the playoffs to go up to the Bundesliga. Give us a feeling for it. We're far away, and now because of COVID, none of us can travel. Bring us into the boiling pot of Bundesliga 2 and what Fortuna Dusseldorf, Hamburg. How is Hamburg in the second division as well? Uwe, you're a good communicator. Bring us into your world.
Starting off with when I joined the club, I think we have to go chronologically. Joined the club 2020 in end of January, beginning of February. The team by then was bottom in the league with second most goals conceded, less goals scored, and I took the job after a very successful spell at Malmö FF, purely of the fact that one of my dreams I had, like to get another tick on the box, was to manage in my homeland. So because I managed in England, in Norway, where my wife comes from, in Sweden, and now I had the opportunity on the back of the results with Malmö FF to get into the Bundesliga. And at my age, and when you also see the recruitment process in German football, there's a lot of young coaches coming through NLZs, through academies, through clubs, where clubs can have a long look at them and groom them a little bit in the way the club wants to go, to come as an outsider, even when I'm a German, to come from the outside back into German football and get one of the 18 jobs. That was a big temptation for me, even when the Fortuna at the time was bottom in the league and only 15 games to play. It was only 15 games to play. So I took a chance because I wanted to fully fulfill my dream. I saw potential. And I also was a big part. Fortuna's history is a traditional club, with a rich history, and has a fantastic stadium with a fantastic crowd. What I felt would be crucial for us to stay in the league, to make up the points. So then we joined and we started off. Everything went well, and then Corona came. So I only had 2 games or 3 games in the stadium with crowd. After that, since today, I'm only at games without the supporters. So that was the plan. And obviously, we as an underdog in the first Bundesliga, when you be bottom in the league, and we needed the crowd to, especially in home games, to raise our standards by another 5-10%. What would have helped us to stay in the league? We improved a lot in all aspects of the game, but not enough to stay in the league. After the relegation, club decided to stay, that I can stay. What is not normal in modern times. The sporting director who signed me had left the club. Was become the new sporting director, and we started the project promotion, but you know how hard it is when you see, especially the championship, when you get relegated, how hard it is to get in the first attempt up. And especially a unique situation here in Düsseldorf was we lost 19 players. 19 players we lost last summer. So we had a pretty rough start into the season. Completely new team. Didn't have much time in preseason because we were recruited very lately because of financial impacts of Corona. We came under pressure straight away. We worked ourselves out. We finished the first half of the season with 31 points. Now we had a down period again. But I believe that we're finding ourselves step by step. We get a hierarchy in the team. We get a certain way of playing. We knowing our best 14, 15 players. But we need to keep them fit. That is our main problem. We have too many injuries. We're hanging in there. I think the league is like the championship a little bit, very equal. Everyone can beat everyone. We need to find a certain consistency, what we have shown in that good spell for 2 months, what we had. When we achieve that in the last 11 games, we still have a chance to win promotion. Everything has to go optimal, that for sure, but is still possible. And I'm looking forward for the next game because I think we should concentrate now only from game to game and forget about another teams, forget about the table situation. Concentrate on the next game and do it step by step, and then we have a chance. I'd be a big believer in that.
Well, we at the big interview not only wish you to get promotion and win game by game, we wish you to be the Deutsche Fußball Botschafter for 2022. You should have won it in 2021, but there you go. All I can say is, Uwe Rösler, it's been a severe pleasure. I'd like to reserve the possibility for when you're busier as a high manager in Fortuna Dusseldorf's push towards the top of the Bundesliga in a year or 18 months, that maybe we find this space again to ask you some more of the questions that we missed out today. But thank you for being so generous with your time. You are not just a Manchester City legend, you're a legend of the big interview. Thank you, Uwe Rösler.
Thank you very much.